The Gilded Age in America birthed the nouveau riche, the famed robber barons who accumulated vast fortunes, influencing the nation's economy. Alongside them were their wives, who tenaciously clawed their way into the top echelon of old money-high society. But the wives of the titans of industry weren't the only ambitious women seeking wealth and status in the late 19th century male-dominated world of power and privilege. Amidst the glittering excess of the super-rich arose a whole slew of female con artists who notoriously turned to less savory, more lucrative pursuits in their feminine efforts to carve their own paths to wealth and prestige. Let's explore just a few of the most daring female swindlers from the Gilded Age, starting with Mrs. Ellen E. Peck, who came to be looked upon as an operator of some talent when, in 1878, she successfully swindled a wealthy soap manufacturer by the name of B.T. Babbitt out of $19,000. It all started when Babbitt was robbed of over $500,000 by a dishonest employee who had been subsequently arrested. Shortly after the arrest, Ellen Peck visited the soap manufacturer in the guise of a female detective looking for a little extra cash. She represented to Babbitt that she was in the possession of valuable information concerning property owned by the clerks which could easily be sued for or seized to recover his considerable loss, and she would gladly pass on that information for a small finder's fee. Mr. Babbitt was so taken in by his visitor that he advanced the amount suggested and only afterwards discovered that Mrs. Peck's information was false and worthless. Next on Ellen Peck's list of victims was Samuel Pingy, a patent medicine man, who fell prey to her tales of insider information from none other than Jay Gould's office. She pretended to Pingy that she had a friend in the office of Jay Gould who gave her all the points about financial affairs, which she could easily pass along to him for, you got it, a small fee. Pingy, eager to profit from the alleged financial insights, willingly parted with $2,700. Little did he know, Ellen's tips were nothing more than a mirage, and he found himself on the losing end of the stock market. John D. Grady, a notorious crooked diamond dealer, also fell victim to Ellen's schemes. In a brilliant play, she secured a large loan by convincing Grady to hand over cash against a rent receipt for a compartment in a safe deposit vault where imaginary diamonds were supposed to be. The compartment, of course, was empty. The cunning confidence woman walked away with thousands of dollars in cash. The wheels of justice, however, eventually caught up with Ellen on various fronts. From larceny charges involving fraudulent loans to forging bonds for insurance money, the web of her deceit continued to unravel. In 1885, she faced the music and received a 4.5-year sentence for forging a bond that netted her $3,000 from the Mutual Life Insurance Company. When she was arrested again in 1908 in New York City at the age of 70, the New York Times called her the Confidence Queen and said she had been arrested many times. In 1911, Ellen E. Peck was pardoned by New York Governor Dix and released from prison at the age of 82 on account of being too old to be a menace to society. Next, we have Mabel Parker, the forger queen of New York. In June of 1899, 17-year-old Mabel Priest married James Parker. Within a few years, the Parkers had picked up a side hustle to make ends meet, defrauding banks. Their devious scheme was genius. First, they would sneak letters containing checks out of strangers' mailboxes, where Mabel would forge the signatures on blank checks from the same bank. James then passed her forgeries at stores. For a time, the ruse raked in over $100 a day. This lasted a while until the summer of 1903, James was arrested. Mabel followed not long after. Stuck behind bars and thrust into the spotlight, Mabel made herself an agent of chaos. In jail, she played pranks and flouted rules. At trial, she spoke freely with reporters and sketched mocking caricatures. During closing arguments, she audibly hummed, "Sticks and stones can hurt my bones, but words can never harm me." On December 11, 1903, her article made the front page of Joseph Pulitzer's Evening World. Mabel's antics earned her a hung jury. She was later retried and convicted. Third on our list is Mary Hansen, aka Dutch Mary. In the summer of 1897, Brooklyn police were on the lookout for a ruthless female swindler. Over the past few years, she had conned the late Dr. Christopher Lott out of his life savings. She was described as elderly, with gray hair and eyes. Police immediately suspected that Ellen Peck had struck again. A few days of investigation proved them wrong. Another grandmotherly grifter was responsible. Mary started conning Dr. Lott after they met in 1894. She confided to him that she was a Danish admiral's wife. Her husband had millions to his name, but unfortunately, the federal government had possession of it. She needed cash to pay the legal fees to access it. Dr. Lott began loaning her money. This continued until 1897, when the ailing doctor learned the truth. He passed away not long after. Mary was convicted of fraud and sent to prison. Now, at this point, you might be wondering if I am going to talk about Cassie Chadwick, the Queen of the Con, who was known by a multitude of aliases. She was once hailed as the female wizard of finance and was considered one of the most notorious con artists in the history of the state of Ohio. Over the course of her life, Cassie managed to swindle over $600,000, not to mention wreaking havoc on the entire state of Ohio's financial system. But I have already done a full video on Cassie Chadwick in the Gilded Age series, so I won't go into her dastardly deeds here. You can catch that video on my channel page. Now, on to Bertha Hayman, a 19th century female criminal, also known as Big Bertha, or the Confidence Queen. She was described by famed New York City detective Thomas F. Burns as one of the smartest confidence women in America, and was considered by the New York City police to be the boldest and most expert of the many female adventuresses who infest the country. She managed to swindle several men out of a total of many thousands of dollars. Bertha's typical scheme involved conning money out of men by pretending to be a wealthy woman who was unable to access her fortune. She stayed at the best hotels and retained both a maid and a manservant in her service, while bragging about having influential friends. Her confidence tricks were described as extraordinarily bold and ingenious, and they were covered by much ostentatious display. Bertha was arrested and jailed numerous times over the course of her criminal career. She was arrested in September 1880 for conning a sleeping car conductor she had met while on a train from Chicago. Bertha had told him that she had a large estate she wanted him to manage, so he quit his job on her promise to hire him. She then told him she needed to borrow some money to obtain the sum that was due to her from her agent, and furthered the deception by taking him to a large house she claimed to own as evidence of her wealth. In 1883, Bertha told the New York Times that she was only interested in getting money, not in having or spending it, and she claimed that she gave the bulk of her ill-gotten funds to the poor. "The moment I discover a man's a fool, I let him drop," she said. "But I delight in getting into the confidence and pockets of men who think they can't be skinned. It ministers to my intellectual pride." And right now is the perfect time for another awesome video about the fabulous, fierce, and feisty women in history.